What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com. Here are my DFS picks for MLB playoffs Wednesday, October 7th. These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button and hit that bell icon so you don't miss our new videos. In this video, I'm going to go over my top picks for today's MLB slate. And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made. Okay guys, MLB playoffs. Let's take a look at this 4-game main slate. At the pitcher position, I'm going to pay up for Clayton Kershaw. Now don't worry, I'm going to give you plenty of value picks in this video, so you'll be able to fit Clayton Kershaw in your lineup pretty easily. So Clayton Kershaw, he's pitching against the San Diego Padres, and he's giving up a .643 OPS versus righties. He's facing 5 righties here tonight, and on top of that, the Padres have only hit 26 of his last 115 pitches, batting a .226 batting average. Clayton Kershaw is $10,300 FanDuel salary and $700 less on DraftKings. He has an ERA of 2.16. His record is 6-2 on the season, pitching an average of 89 pitches per game. He's scoring an average of 38 fantasy points per game, and he scored 18, 46, and 41 fantasy points in the last 3 games. He's projected at 27.2 fantasy points here tonight, but the reason I like this pick is because take a look at his last 5 games versus the San Diego Padres. He scored 41, 49, 37, 49, and 37 fantasy points in his last 5 games versus the Padres, so he has excellent pitcher versus team history here. So I like Clayton Kershaw here versus the San Diego Padres. Okay, let's take a look at the catcher position. I'm going to give you a value play here. I like Sean Murphy with a 61% batting advantage over a low salary pitcher, Jose Urquidy. Sean Murphy bats 19% better versus righty pitchers. He's batting a .918 OPS versus righties. And Jose Urquidy, he pitches his worst ball versus righty batters, 42% worse than his other pitches, giving up a .836 OPS versus righties. Murphy is 0 for 1 versus Urquidy, but it's a small sample size, and he's only $2,300 FanDuel salary and $1,400 more on DraftKings. So I love that FanDuel price. He's averaging 8 fantasy points per game on the season, and he scored 0, 19, and 31 fantasy points in the last 3 games. Projected at 12.4 fantasy points here tonight. So I like Sean Murphy here versus Jose Urquidy. Okay, who do we have at the second base position? I like John Berti. Oh, this is another value play for you. John Berti has a 26% batting advantage here over Ian Anderson. John Berti is batting a .746 OPS versus righties, and Ian Anderson throws his worst ball to righty batters, giving up a .601 OPS versus righties. John Berti is 4 for 5 with a 1.8 OPS versus Anderson, and he's only $2,700 FanDuel salary and $300 less on DraftKings. So I like that DraftKings price. He's averaging 10 fantasy points per game on the season, and he scored 6, 6, and 18 fantasy points in the last 3 games. He's projected at 11.1 fantasy points here tonight, so I like John Berti here versus Ian Anderson. Okay, who do we have at the third base position? I like Justin Turner. Now, at the time of recording this video, the Padres haven't announced a probable pitcher, but Justin Turner, he's batting a .835 OPS versus lefties and a .872 OPS versus righties. so he bats well to both hands. He's 3,100 FanDuel salary and 1,400 more on DraftKings. He's averaging 11 fantasy points per game on the season, and he scored 19, 0, and 3 fantasy points in the last 3 games, projected at 10.9 fantasy points here tonight. He also has some nice batter versus team history here. In his last 5 games, he scored 19, 9, 16, 6, and 29 fantasy points versus the San Diego Padres. So I like Justin Turner here versus the San Diego Padres.
Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. The tools are all about saving research time. You can see the last 3 games, the fantasy points per game, the targets they got per game, so you can see how involved they are in the offense, the rushes they got per game. Seeing all this stuff on one screen helps you save time and make better picks. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups.
Okay, let's take a look at the shortstop position. I like Carlos Correa with a 42% batting advantage over Jesus Luzardo. Carlos Correa bats 8% better versus lefty pitchers. He's batting a .862 OPS versus lefties. And Jesus Luzardo, he throws his worst ball versus righty batters, giving up a .664 OPS versus righties. Now Correa is only 1 for 5 versus Luzardo, but he's 3,300 FanDuel salary and 700 more on DraftKings. He's averaging 8 fantasy points per game on the season, and he scored 7, 47, and 22 fantasy points in the last 3 games, projected at 11.6 fantasy points here tonight. So I like Carlos Correa here versus Jesus Luzardo. Okay, moving on to the outfield position. With those value plays, even if you're playing Clayton Kershaw, you're going to have some salary in your lineup to fit one of these 2 players, or even both of them if you build the rest of your lineup right. So I like Marcell Ozuna. He doesn't have a batting advantage here, but he's batting against Pablo Lopez. And Marcell Ozuna, he's batting a .903 OPS versus righties. And Pablo Lopez is giving up a .588 OPS versus righties. Now, Ozuna is only 2 for 9 versus Lopez, and he's 4,000 FanDuel salary and 700 more on DraftKings. But he's averaging 14 fantasy points per game on the season, and he scored 22, 22, and 0 fantasy points in the last 3 games, projected at 11.8 fantasy points here tonight. So I like Marcell Ozuna here versus Pablo Lopez. But if you have the extra salary in your lineup, I would prefer Ronald Acuna Jr. And he's batting against Pablo Lopez. Acuna Jr. bats 9% better versus righty pitchers. He's batting a .951 OPS versus righties. And we know Pablo Lopez is giving up a .588 OPS versus righties. But Acuna Jr. is 5 for 14 with a .357 batting average and a 1.257 OPS versus Lopez. 2 of those 5 hits were for home runs. He's 4,500 FanDuel salary and 900 more on DraftKings. He's averaging 15 fantasy points per game on the season, and he scored 28, 22, and 6 fantasy points in the last 3 games, projected at 13.8 fantasy points here tonight. So I like Ronald Acuna Jr. here versus Pablo Lopez.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com.
You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video.
Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smiggity smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this MLB slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.